Hello, everyone. We're happy to have you with us today for our first webinar as part of our speaker series for the Open Finance Lab. My name is Nino Ocampo. I'm the Chief Product Officer of Tarabut Gateway, and I will be your host for today's webinar. This is the first of our speaker series as part of the OFL program. It's an initiative that's been launched by the DIFC involving Tarabut Gateway as a technical platform partner and 6 participating banks in the UAE. Our speaker series brings industry experts from around the world to share their insights. The goal of the lab is to educate and stimulate discussion around the benefits of open banking and open finance, and to test some real-life use cases. And today, I'm very pleased to introduce our first speaker of the series, Alastair Campbell, who is NatWest's Group Head of Strategy and also a dear friend of mine. Alastair is currently leading the efforts to transform NatWest to be more customer-focused and data-centric, and to position the bank as a leader in purpose-led banking. So we're really glad to have you with us today, Alastair. And as we discuss the strategic importance of open banking to NatWest, some of the key initiatives that you've already done in the space, and among other topics, sort of what's the future, to also talk about purpose-led banking. So maybe to start off, Alastair, many banks here in the region are just starting their open banking journey. And we've been talking to several of them, and some are excited and optimistic about what open banking will enable them to do. A number of them are still waiting to be convinced about the benefits, and quite a few are still developing a perspective on what open banking could mean for them. I was hoping you could maybe start us out by helping our viewers fast forward a few years into the future and talk about, I guess, the current state of open banking at NatWest.
Thank you, Nino, and as ever, really great for us to get a chance to catch up. But yes, so NatWest, obviously the UK open banking regime has been a regulatory regime for a little while now, and NatWest, like all of our peers, or the CM9, the 9 banks that were regulated to conform by statute, we have all got our APIs up and running and are now using that data to share. I think it was great that it was done in that framework, because it creates not just the fact that we all know that obviously the nature of open banking is when everybody does it, everybody benefits, but it relies on everybody doing it. But also you do need genuinely standards and rules of the road and clarity as to what the standards are and what the APIs are that we need in order that we actually can just make progress and get going. NatWest, I think we always viewed it as 2 things from the start. We always viewed it as a regulatory compliance challenge, but also an opportunity to serve our customers better. We are a deep incumbent within the UK, but that doesn't mean that our relationships with our customers are, complete and total. There's an awful lot of business we don't do with our customers today. And so our ability to deepen and lengthen the relationships with the customers we already have by understanding what we don't have with them and understanding the whole of their financial picture in life, we recognize is a big opportunity for us. So whilst we were doing it for regulatory compliance reasons, we recognized it was a better way to run the bank and the industry as well.
That's really cool. Can you maybe talk about some of the initiatives that you've launched? Because I've heard about a number of things, like, and you've talked about it with me, like the bank of API, some of the VRP propositions. I think our viewers would love to hear more about some of these programs.
Yeah, so I think the reality of our institution in terms of our API strategy and approach, and I think it will be true for all of them, is a period of evolution. We, as I say, we started with, frankly, sort of almost like a back office team trying to make sure we were regulatory compliant, and they have sort of expanded and grown into a more of what we now refer to as the Bank of APIs team, who are looking to find ways to provide APIs and customers for those APIs. At the moment, they still operate a little bit back office within our own institution, and that their customers are the franchise customers of the front bank. But one potential path forward is that we see it as literally another bank. see it as another franchise. I'm not sure that's the right answer, and I'll come back to why. But they've been going down a route like that, and they've got some good examples of, you say, the variable recurring payment API. Actually, one of our best performing ones from a commercial perspective is a proof of address API, where we can help e-commerce players to confirm addresses of potential customers and suppliers, to confirm they've actually got a real customer at either end. And those kind of things have been quite powerful. And I think we're making a lot of progress there. I think as we uptick our ambition in this area, which I have to say is more extreme and broad, there's an interesting challenge for us, which is, we talk about being open on the inside. That one of the things about an API culture externally is it encourages an API culture internally, and that actually we need to, as Amazon famously did 20 odd years ago, need to view all of our services as modular and reusable externally and reusable internally. And so that's having a powerful effect on the quality of our platforming and things internally. But of course, then you're starting to think about whole new propositions, not just with our own services, but actually with partners as well. And we have a lot of exciting ideas in the works around that.
That's really cool. And I was remembering when we were catching up, you were talking to me about this sort of being open internally and sort of this API culture. Can you talk to some of the challenges? Because I think I remember you saying, like, well, now everyone wants to build these APIs. And so what are the challenges there? Because actually, to your point, from an evolution standpoint, it may start with one team. But actually, once the bank starts to embrace the opportunity, then actually everyone will want to expose data, will want to use APIs for commercial benefit or for a better customer experience. Can you maybe talk about, okay, what are the challenges that you're dealing with now?
Yeah, so I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? I think you know, one of the I don't know if all banks have this, but we definitely have a difference in budgeting associated with regulatory budgeting versus discretionary budgeting. So a small positive for all the people on the call who may be thinking about API budget, how they're going to get budget to do it. The great advantage is if the regulator insists on it, you've got a nice regulatory budget to secure to get started on it. But as soon as you want to branch beyond that, obviously you're thinking more discretionary and things like that. And to start with initially, obviously that is that two things make that feel incremental. One is that you're thinking about individual APIs. What is the next specific API, specific information exchange or data exchange, and what's the specific NPV benefit of that? But also internally, that skill, that capability is relatively narrowly held, and it was in potentially one or two groups in the bank, and that those people are doing the work on their own. As you elevate, and this is I think where we're getting to now, we're both, that capability is more broadly understood, and we're starting to think more about propositions and augmenting propositions in the mainstream bank. That's exactly what we need to do as a bank, but obviously at that point you're starting to unleash the energy of the bank, and you're starting to therefore multiply and duplicate services and approaches across the bank. We actually haven't started ourselves yet, but at some point I'm sure there will be a customer out there that we end up competing with internally, but I doubt that'll happen immediately, but at some point.
That's great. That's great, and thank you for sharing. I think if the viewers have missed that, especially the ones who are looking at budgets, power tip, right? The regulatory budgets get approved, so you know, make sure to put as much there so that you can do more with what you're doing. I think that is a great tip. I wanted to talk about customers and benefits of customers, but before we go there, you were also talking, and you know, when we were catching up about sort of what you're doing now at NatWest, you know, you're leading this strategy around getting NatWest to be more customer centric and also data centric. Can you share more about this, and you know, how does open banking or open data fit into this, and also what are the benefits that you want that you're looking to provide to customers?
I mean, it's a very fair question, you know, and I think therein lies the critical starting point if you want to view the open banking era as an era of opportunity, particularly if you're an incumbent bank. Obviously, if you're a challenger or whatever, it's probably easier to see it as such. But I think even as an incumbent, what I think we all have to recognize, and I think what we're recognizing quite deeply is our industry isn't perfect. It's not the case that the financial lives of our customers are completely served by the way that we do business with them today. In fact, I'll push further and say the financial lives of our customers are normally actually quite a mystery to the banks themselves. We know what they do with the bank, and we have a relationship with them about their banking, but we don't really have a relationship about trying to solve their financial lives. And I think, I think an important thing for me there is just the importance of financial health and well-being. We're tempted as a category to think what we do is very boring. And of course, what we do, banking, is boring. But customers' financial health and financial well-being is not boring. Their money, their financial health is very important, emotional, and critical thing in their life. And there is a wealth of potential for us to serve that better. And I can talk lots of different ways we can do that. And I think the opportunity is for us as incumbents to do that and to build long, sticky relationships with our customers as a result. And the downside is if we don't, others will. And that's why we see huge valuations for embedded finance players, for fintechs, or whatever, who I think are closer to helping customers with their financial lives. So that would be the first thing I would say on that point. I think the second point I'd make on that about customers and how it relates to us is, I think we used to believe that customers' behavior with banks was driven largely by inertia. In the end, you open a bank account with one bank. They are your so-called primary bank, and that you do your primary banking with them. If you had more than one provider, you'd have Bank A for product A, you might have a different bank for product B, you might get your mortgage somewhere else, or you might get your investment somewhere else, but you effectively have a horses for courses strategy. Whereas increasingly in the UK, we've found for some time that it's not the case that customers who open with a new bank like Monzo or Revolut or whatever exit their incumbent bank. No, actually, they have multiple banks, relationships with multiple banks, serving the same product. Product A is, and then within current accounts, I put my salary into NatWest, but I do all my foreign payments with Revolut, and I do all my peer-to-peer payments with Monzo or whatever, because of inadequacy of the services. And I think that's the world that we are now facing, is this more, our customers have become more open loop, and we need to become more open loop with them. In that world, what we can now see coming the other way is once you've got open data and open finance as a standard, we can see examples where it's possible to ask a customer, would you give us your open banking permissions? We will see your financial life across all of your relationships. And on that basis, we will offer you credit. And of course, it turns out some of the innovators that are doing that are finding customers that are actually prime lending customers in reality, who would never have become viewed as prime through the traditional sort of credit agency check means. And actually a few customers the other way around that actually are not actually as great a risk in reality as they would have appeared in the agency credit scoring kind of model. So you're starting to see that sense of, you can see a customer's whole financial life. And you can see that obviously once that data thing comes through, there are things that we can do much better as a bank about helping people with their financial lives, both in terms of embedding in our service in the ecosystems, but also in terms of the holistic data we provide them.
I think that, my experience even leading open banking for TransUnion in the UK, the Bureau mirrors exactly what you said, where, at any different point in time, at least in the UK, there was a lender is looking at maybe 30% of their applicants are thin file, right? And they don't get access to the right credit at the right terms. And through open banking, if they share data, you get that financial picture. The lender gets to approve more. The customer gets a slicker digital journey, right? They get access to better credit. So yeah, I think that's a great example. I remember also that it wasn't a metaphor, but when last time we talked, you even went down to say the types of technology, or just take a mainframe, right? So I mean, do you remember that discussion that we had, where you were saying, like, how is the mainframe configured? It's based on products, but actually how do we need to see our customers? Can you speak a little about that? Because I think that will be quite useful to our viewers.
Yeah, I mean, this is a difficult and rooted question that we are evolving away from. I think, to be fair, all banks are doing it at different degrees, isn't it? Which is, at its core, our core banking system our core banking systems were designed to know rigorously what the bank owes every single customer and what every single customer owes the bank at every point in time. And quite right too. That's the most important thing. But what it means is, in the deep of the architecture, product, customer, and account are hardwired together, and that what we record and keep as a record system of record is the account and the status of the account and the ins and outs of the account. We must do forever. But to say that that's a basis for building services for our customers is clearly, there's a huge number of constraints there. So the most obvious one is, whilst we know exactly what the bank owes us and what we owe the customers owe us and we owe the customers, we have no idea what the customer owes anybody else, what their financial relationships and financial network is with anyone else, and we can't help them to model that or manage that or mirror that. And so things like peer-to-peer payments, clubs and societies where customers group together, family banking, customers having personal relationships and business relationships, all of that would be incredibly easy for a graph-based, event-based database to help customers manage. Because we don't provide our services from that kind of a database, we're unable, a modern database like that, we're unable to provide those sort of services. Now, increasingly, those are services in other fields where big tech and new tech, but everything from Netflix to Spotify to Amazon, and will provide services based on those richer data services that we are unable to mirror. And so, I talk about the analogy of a fault line I still have in my own household is I can't persuade my son that Amazon exists, Father Christmas exists, when he can see what Father Christmas was buying in my Amazon spend history. But so I need to be able to give him conditional access to some parts of the Hey, I'm just on the computer. There we go. The very person I was talking about. I can't persuade him that Father Christmas exists if he can see the spend history in my Amazon account. I need to partition that off. But I need to be able to partition my finances the same way. I'd like to be able to control his finances, but I'd be able to see them, be able to manage them. I'd like him to have access to some of mine, but not all of mine. I can't represent any of that in a core banking system. And the people are using some of our best competitors, the new start competitors, because they can do those kind of things. That's the kind of thing that an open banking regime demands that we do, but enables us to do.
I think that's really a great point, because what you're saying is it's not enough to have the data available in an open banking ecosystem, right? Many of the players, whether they be in incumbent banks or anyone else, will have to adopt certain types of capabilities and technology to really make the most out of that, to provide the right service to the customers.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
No, this is super cool. What was the journey like? So I know that it's still a journey, but what was it like to get to this point? Because I remember when I led open banking at HSBC, the first few years were almost completely swamped by the regulation. The team started out as a tech team purely looking at the regs. And many times, like even the commercial resources were asked to work on the regulatory initiatives. It was just a monster. And we couldn't devote enough time to really think about the commercial use case. I guess, was it the same at NatWest? How did you manage to balance that view? And I guess, so maybe let's start there.
I do think, I think the advantage there are banks that are too small, and there are banks that are too big, and there are banks that are sort of a bit more Goldilocks in terms of their ability to single-mindedly focus on one thing. And I think that was probably quite an important thing. Was right from the start, we were able to say, this is a thing we have to do, but it doesn't mean we just have to do what we have to do. Let's try and do it well and try and focus energy behind it. So I think there was a sense of let's get it right, let's do it. I don't think getting through the regulatory stuff, the compliance stuff, is easy for anybody, because it's itself a moving goalpost and things like that. And you don't want to miss the deadlines, you don't want to fail to hit it or whatever. But I think it was definitely using the regulatory demand to galvanize the organization to do it and do it well, not get this monkey off our back.
No, that's great. And to be frank, and to give credit to many of the banks who we're talking to, that is the stance that they're taking, right? We have to do this. Let's do it well. What advice would you have for banks in the Middle East that are just starting out?
Yeah, well, I think obviously, to that point, get ahead of the regulation and make sure you know what it is and put sufficient resources behind it. I do think recognizing that being open on the outside and being open on the inside is a tech transformation you're going to want to do anyway. So ensure that the API gateways and the standards and the protocols and things like that are things that you are doing internally as well as externally, and then it becomes a transformation that you'll all appreciate enough. So that's from the technical perspective. But from the strategic perspective, just massively focus on that huge headroom of underserved customer needs. All the things that our customers could have and want to have more healthy financial lives that we can be part of trying to solve. But we will do so only if we have a holistic view of the data, a holistic view of their financial life, but also if we're willing to embed our services in the wider set of services out there. So we talked about our strategy. One of the taglines of the strategy was a relationship bank for the digital age, and that was a tagline for the strategy as it started in 2000. And as we refresh the strategy now, one of the points we're trying to make is what we meant, if we were honest with ourselves, what we meant when we said it 3 or 4 years ago was digitizing the bank. What we meant, we're going to be a relationship bank, but we're going to be a digital first relationship bank. Actually, what we now got to start to mean is, no, our customers are living in a digital age. They are living in a digital world. We need to be where our customers are, not expect them to come to us. If they want to do banking at point of sale, we need to be at the point of sale. If they want to do banking in a connected home, in a connected value chain, in procurement, in all those areas, we need to be able to provide those services there and embed them with partners in the world around them. And in that world, we then, well, who are we? We're either the dumb balance sheet, the dumb piping all that, or the relationship part that we then have with our customers is we're their financial custodian. We are the people who understand their financial life and are helping them have a productive financial life. They're over there where they're having it, not inside our bank. And so that's a sort of that constant sense of there's a different world out there. The world of open banking is that customers will do banking, but not at the bank, and we can be there with them, creating solutions to problems. And I'm really optimistic about the kind of things that will relate to. I mean, one thing, for example, is as a bank we focus very heavily on climate and supporting the climate change industry. Now, a large portion of that, of course, is decarbonizing production, but increasingly in the next phase, decarbonizing consumption is a good example as we start to move to the circular economy. Well, in the end, the circular economy is going to be two-way supply chains that don't just go from manufacturer to consumer, but also effectively go backwards. They are literally circular. There is a whole set of financial intermediation, of provenance management. There's a whole concept of trade. What the letters of credit like products mean to help spot authenticity and provenance within those circular supply chains. That is whole new financial innovation and that's growing much quicker than the banking industry overall, that we can be part of for our customers if we're willing to jump the extra mile. That's the promise of the open banking embedded finance era.
That's great, and that's super Interesting. Can you maybe talk to, maybe share some of your views about, so I think you've started to share trends, embedded finance, sustainability, but where do you see open banking, open finance, open data going? Like, what are the big opportunities? What are the key problems that this movement could solve?
Yeah. So I mean, I do think there are quite a few. I mean, I think there's a wave of things like the point we made around credit access, which is there's a lot of unequal access to credit now, which is perhaps because of lack of data or partition data and those kind of things. So I think there's a lot of social justice that can be solved through this, for the commercial interests of the banks, not out of altruism, through better understanding of customers' credit. That's that whole piece. I think the next level up is around sort of payments and exchange. So I think we often think we're in the payments industry. I think we're actually in the trust exchange industry. I think what actually happens when a payment is made is there is an exchange of trust, and digitally it takes something to reproduce that. And I think that one of the mistakes that institutions like us often make is when we think of the buy now pay later players like Klarna, we often think of them as lenders, as an alternative source of lending. Where actually I think our customers sometimes view them as an alternative source of trust. They can buy things online from someone they've never met before, from a picture of a pair of shoes or something. They don't have to pay for the shoes. They get the shoes. If they don't like them, they don't fit or whatever, they can just send them back. So I don't have to trust the supply chain or the product or whatever when I click the button. And I think what we are doing in so many ways with open banking, and when you combine it with ISO 2022 for payments, is enabling a broader and enrichment exchange. You can exchange the money and you can exchange data, and you can make the things conditional on each other. And that means all the things that I can't buy today, I might be able to buy in the future. So I can't say, Nino, I'd like to buy the use of your car this afternoon. That's not a trade that can happen right now, because you can't prove to me you own the car. I can't prove to you that I can drive. I can't prove to you that I've got insurance. And we don't have a settlement process if I lose it or break it or whatever. All that is the world of possibility that's out there if we can start to use open finance and embedded finance. I mean, final and sort of stupid analogy would be when maps went digital. So in the UK we had the A to Z of London, the map of London, whatever. There used to be a book that everyone carried around, and now, of course, that A to Z is on everyone's iPhone. But when people put it on the iPhone, it didn't just turn into a map. That became Uber, and then it became Deliveroo. And because once you can combine a map with GPS, you know where you are, not where the streets are. And suddenly a whole new series of consumer possibilities was opened up. And I think the same is true. If we can take our banking products and embed them in the digital lives of our customers, there's a wealth of customer solutions available to us that just aren't available to us now.
This is great. This is great. Last question, really. I know that your CEO, Alison, has talked a lot about purpose at NatWest, and you've mentioned this to me a couple of times, and you've talked about some of it already, but can you share more about this vision that you have of purposeful banking?
And Alison is very passionate about it and very eloquent about it. But I think to that point, which is the danger for us is that as employees of the bank, we think our ultimate service, I'm exaggerating to make a point, we're in service of our own balance sheet. Is that the thing that we have to service is the integrity and the valuation of the balance sheet, which is a very important thing. I mean, that's important to being central. But we can have a larger purpose than that. We can be there to try and help our customers, be they individuals or families or businesses, to have more healthy financial lives and healthy existences. And we can be there to support the community transitions and the ecosystems that need to be built to be a sustainable communities, both economically and environmentally. And that if you, as Alison has done, made it very clear that that's what you want to be, ironically, there's a whole series of corollary benefits. The first is the example that we've given. You don't fear or bemoan industry changes like open banking. You embrace them and you race forward because there's so much more you can do for your customers and society if only you had access to these things. So it's an empowering, embracing the future thing. Secondly, there's just a straightforward turning up to work thing. People can turn up to work and feel proud of who they are because they're doing something of wider value and they can feel connected to it. And so our ability to motivate, inspire, but also even attract new talent definitely has gone up with the purpose agenda. And then finally, actually, it can speed up decision making. I mean, I think one of the things, when the pandemic happened in the UK and the UK went into lockdown, the government intervened, as it did in many countries, to provide these sort of targeted business loans, whatever. And the banks were viewed as the distribution agent. NatWest came out the blocks with that capability because we knew it was about our customers, for whom we knew the CEO was desperate that we are purpose-centric and worried about our customers. And in the first 2 or 3 months of the pandemic, of all the banks, we're like the third largest bank. We did 75% of all that distribution for the whole industry was done by our bank. And I don't think it was because the words out of the CEO's mouth in that moment were different from the words out of any other CEO's mouth. It's that because purpose has been her narrative for so long and so deeply, everybody knew how much she meant it. And there was no middle manager that thought, well, if I devote more energy to this or I do more on it, I'm going to at some point be embarrassed by my boss or something like that. The purpose had everybody's back as to what we were here to do, and it meant decision making and speed of decision making went up as a result. So I think for multiple reasons, it's very powerful, but I think it does help things like the open banking regime because it does encourage you just to focus on how we can be better, more relevant to our customers' financial lives.
It's a great perspective, and it's, even just hearing it, it's liberating and energizing. So that's great. Thank you. Well, it's been a great conversation, Alastair. Thank you for taking the time to share your experience, your insights. And it's not just about open banking. I think what you've touched on is, it bleeds across capabilities. It's looking at that headroom where what are the underserved needs of customers, and it requires a transformation internally to be able to participate and partner externally. So and at the heart of it is purpose, right? So thank you so much. I'm sure our viewers will find this insightful and interesting. And to all the viewers, thank you for tuning in and watching this first webinar. Please stay tuned for the next ones in our series, and have a great day, everyone. Thank you.